All right, working on a 2015 Jeep Patriot, and this guy is showing to have a alternator issue. So what process they've already accomplished was having the alternator tested, and you can have the alternator and battery tested at any parts store. Just to let you guys know, if you want to determine which is at fault. And they went ahead and took it to the parts store and found that the alternator was the culprit and the reason why it wasn't charging. So the vehicle is equipped with a 2.4 liter 4-cylinder, and the alternator is located down there. Now it does look like there's a lot of stuff on top, but that's the reason why we're not going to remove it from the top. We're going to remove it from the bottom. So we're gonna, all right, got the Jeep up in the air, and of course we went ahead and got the jack stands placed on the K-member. We still have to remove this cover, so don't place the jack stands underneath this plastic cover. We gotta get that bad boy off. And of course I lifted it from back there. That's on the K-member. Do not lift it on the motor and transmission. You will do some severe damage if you did that. So make sure it's on the K-member. After you get those jack stands in there, go ahead and remove your jack. Now the next setup is, they got these aftermarket wheels on here, and we gotta get these guys off. Of course, this company has this beauty cover on here, make it look pretty or whatever. But behind it, the bolts are, the lug nuts are pretty much going to be the same as any other. It should be 19 millimeter. Oh, this one's got aftermarkets on here, but they're still 19s. All right, so after the vehicle's on jack stands, I went ahead and had the tire popped off. Remember, those are 19 millimeter. Slide it off to the side. Go ahead and disconnect the battery terminal, because you're dealing with electrical. You don't want to have a shock or cause a fire or whatnot. So make sure you get the battery disconnected. 13 millimeter, 10 millimeter, depending on what terminals. They've already done swap the terminals on that thing. So after I do that, come down here. We're gonna have to remove this cover. You're gonna have to need a tool like this and get these tabs off. All right, so there's gonna be 2 tabs on both sides. There's one, and then it's either 13 or 10 millimeter bolts, depending on what year. I take it these things are, what factory it comes out of. So get those 2, then you have 2 on the other side, and then you have these. Got to get all those out. I think there's 6, 3, 6, and then 2 more tabs on that side. After you do that, the cover will come off. All right, so I got the cover off. I went and placed all the screws and the plastic clips that are held on the sides in a pile. Try not to lose them all. Now that we have it exposed, we can clearly see there's your alternator right there. But first off, we need to remove the belt. The tensioner is right here, and you will need a 16 millimeter to get that bad boy loose. Like so. Try not to pinch your hands, and remember the belt diagram. Remember how it's coming off. That way you're not lost when you go to re-put it back together. So you know it loops around. All right. It goes back over there. So I'm gonna get this off. Then we gotta get this pulley off. And that, I'm pretty sure it's a 16 as well. Yes. So let's get this off. Let's see where we're at. All right, so after I go ahead and remove the pulley, right there, it was right here. You can go ahead and remove the belt the rest of the way. We're gonna have to remove the compressor, AC compressor, but do not remove the lines. That is a no-go. You do not remove those lines. All we're gonna do is let it hang. There is an electrical connector back here, and you will have to disconnect it. And there is a connector right there. As you can see, I've already done disconnected it, and it's hanging. So you're gonna disconnect that. That way there's no tension on it. And we're gonna remove the bolts that hold the compressor to the bracket. we gotta get this bracket out of here. There's a 13mm bolts. There's one back here, one there, and one right there. So get those out and we'll let this bad boy hang. All right, so now we got the 3 bolts out. Of course, it's sitting right there and it's pinched between the frame and this bracket. You got to remove the bracket. Of course, there's 13mm bolts as well that's holding it on. So you gotta get that out of there. Yeah, give me a little bit of that room right there. There we go. Now that we got that out of there. Oh, and by the way, I couldn't use my air tools on it. There's just no room. So, yeah, I used hand tools. That's always fun. Now, the alternator has definitely got room to play with it. You might have to pull the hose just a little farther. AC compressor to get it out of the way so you can slide that alternator out of there. See that electrical connector right there in the back? This is why you disconnect the battery, because that's a hot wire hooked directly to the battery. It should be a 13mm underneath it. Yep, 13. You're gonna disconnect that and you're gonna disconnect this excite wire. Oh, the lighting sucks. But yeah, there it is. You're gonna disconnect this excite wire. You're gonna pull this red tab back, squeeze this little deal, and it should slide out like so, and that's a 13. So let's get those off. Use just a wrench to get that off. 13mm. All right, so we got this compressor hanging, and of course on the alternator you have a bolt right there and you have a bolt at the very top. It's a 13mm. It's kind of hard to get in there with the air tools, so you're gonna have to use a ratchet and a socket and get it out of there. I went ahead and busted it loose, so it's coming out. There it is, 13mm. And then there's that one, and that's a 16. But the good side on the bottom one, you don't have to pull the nut all the way out. It's your choice if you want to, but this bracket right here should be a U, kind of cradles in there. Let me look on the back side of this alternator. All right, there's a deal back there, and that guy is probably spinning in a circle, it looks like. So we're gonna need another 16 to put on there and get it off, bust them loose. All right, so it looks like it will need to get pried out of there. It's a little on the rough side. Compressor right there kind of does make it a pain in the butt. There it is, so you can see. I'm gonna set him, let it cradle, but you can clearly see that little loop right there. So you don't have to remove them out, and there's that bracket that's in the back side of this alternator right there. So he can stay there, and I just gotta get him out of this hole. It catches right here on this little lip, but you have to turn it sideways and the head comes out first. You will have to wiggle it, but it'll eventually drop out. And once you got it out, the next step is to go ahead and confirm that the one that you received, look, it even ripped my glove. You need to make sure that the new alternator looks identical to this one. So we got a new one right here. Place that bad boy right next to that one. Make sure it's identical. So we're gonna have to remove this bolt, slide him in there. Get that out of here. Looks correct to me. Turn it around. Make sure the connections on the back side are identical as well. So connector, You're hot. Good to go. I'm going to take this off, put it on here, and we'll slide it back in there. All right, now that I went ahead and swapped it over, we can go ahead and reinstall this. Get the bolt on there ready. And notice that little guy right there. When you tighten this down, this squeezes on that little J looking bracket that's on that motor essentially itself. As you can see, it's on this side. It's pushing a little bit right here. That's what's going to happen with this one. This is the fun part. All right, so push the alternator back in there. You gotta get it back on that little J-hook deal. And it'll fall right back in there. Like so. Grab your bolt and get that puppy back in there. And you go ahead and tighten that bolt and tighten this one down. Then we'll get the compressor on. All right, so went ahead and tightened that bolt down, and I got that 13 millimeter up there tightened. Now going to the back side, you got to rehook up your connection. Now the alternator did come with a new bolt, but I like to use the original equipment. It came with a little dinky bolt. Where is it at? It's somewhere on the floor here. I'm not going to use that thing. I went ahead and stuck the factory bolt back in there. It's thick, it's heavy duty. I ain't got to worry about it. And reinstalled it, and also the electrical connector. That's the excite wire for the alternator. Without that wire, it won't charge. So you got to make sure you get both connected, and then pop your cover back on, like so. Now we'll go ahead and work on getting the bracket installed for the AC compressor. All right, so now with this bracket, we had to reinstall it to do the compressor. Remember, it's those 3 bolts to the oil pan, 13 millimeter. Just went ahead and snugged them on, and now it's time to go ahead and put your compressor on. And of course, you got the 3 bolts as well. You have 1 here and 2 on the, 1 back here and 1 on top. So you gotta get those guys in. Let's see if I can find my bolts. There's my long ones. It's good while it's loose to go ahead and slide them all in and then start working it, because there might be a situation where you can't get these in and you tighten that up. So get them all in first, then we'll go ahead and tighten them up. So let's get that done. All right guys, so as we're finishing up, getting those 3 bolts tightened up, you want to make sure you get around to this harness right here that plugs into that connector right there. Without that plugged in, you won't have no air conditioning. So make sure that wire is plugged in and all your bolts are tight. The 3 here and a 3 on the bracket. So now it's a good idea to start wrapping your belt, in which I told you at the very beginning to go ahead and remember the diagram. If you forgot the diagram, you can run to your nearest parts store. I'll show you a quick pitch. Just like that. That belt will have to go on exactly the way that diagram shows on here. So let's get that installed, and then we'll pop that pulley on. All right, so after I get these bolts tightened, I went ahead and popped this pulley back on. 16 millimeter, tightened it down, and then I went ahead and placed the belt on. Goes around the compressor, alternator, down to that pulley, back up to the power steering pump that's way on the top, then to the pulley, then it goes to the water pump, then it comes back around to the tensioner, then to the harmonic balancer. And you will have to go in a counterclockwise direction to get it to loosen up, to place it on. So I left this one loose, then I pulled it down and I popped it on right here. Make sure these belts are in the grooves. all the way around, because if you go to start it and it's not, it can be liable to either strip, destroy itself, or pop off, and you'd have to start all over. So make sure that it's on all grooves. If it's got a big lip, make sure it's all on the little ones, okay? So after you do that, she's pretty much done at the very bottom. Always double check your work, make sure your connections are good on your alternator as well. You know, earlier in the game, went ahead and done it, and it looks, everything is the way it should be. Now you can go ahead and pop all your plastic back on the undercarriage. Remember, it's that 10 millimeter and those little plastic little deals that go right here and right there. Same goes on the driver's side. You have one right there and one right here. So let's get that cover on. Pretty easy. All right, as we're finishing putting the bottom belly pan back on. All right, you don't have to kill these bolts. There's 6 of them. So you have the 3 in the front, 3 in the rear. You have the 2 plastic tabs on this side, and you also have to follow with the 2 tabs on this side. So, and if you're missing any, you can always run to your nearest part store, and they got these things in stock all the time. A little plastic tab right here. If you try to buy this at the dealership, you're gonna pay a lot more money. So now that that's out of the way, we can go ahead and pop the tire on. It's always nice to inspect your work. So make sure you always inspect. Oh yeah, there's that cheap bolt that come with the alternator. Yeah, it's nice to give you a little lock washer, but look at this nut. This is, yeah, that's why I used OEM nut. Look at those. Let's get this tire on. And depending on what kind of a wheel you have, this is aluminum, so we're gonna go 100 foot-pounds, and you always go in a star pattern. Never go in a circle when you go to torque them. So I'm gonna get this tire on. All right, so I pretty much have the jack holding the vehicle just slightly off the ground. That way I can go ahead and get the wheels torqued. All right, I'm using a torque wrench. There we go. Alrighty, I'm gonna pop this cover on and lay it completely on the ground. All right, so we got the beauty cover back on there. We can go ahead and completely lay it on the ground. Then we can go ahead and rehook the battery up. All right, so we pretty much got the engine back together. You have to do the final details. If you did remove the cover, put your cover back on. And go ahead and rehook up your battery terminals, making sure they're both tight. Always check for loose connectors, just in case you haven't got around to it. Any corrosion, clean it. Get it done before you go to rehooking up your battery for a nice, good, clean connection between everything. It's also good to also double check your grounds. One ground is right here. There's also one ground down there. You have one right there. Always make sure your grounds are clean. Mwah. Alrighty, so let's check it out. Let's see what we got going on here. All right, looks like we got the battery light off, so it looks like she's charging. How about, let's see what our computer is saying. We got 14.49 volts. A nice good charge. Alternator's installed. And with that said, the job has been completed. Thank you for following, working on this 2015 Jeep Patriot, installing an alternator, and we've got good charge. I do appreciate you guys watching my video. If you guys like my video, please hit the like button. If you guys like to follow me, please hit the subscribe button down below. And as always, thanks for watching.